To automatically find and mark peaks for identification, select the Find Peaks shortcut button in the toolbar. The software will use a peak detection algorithm to find and mark all peaks in the currently displayed wavelength range with intensities above the current peak threshold intensity defined by the peak ID threshold cursor, this purple line here. The peaks identified by the algorithm will be marked with a small red dot. The peak threshold intensity can be adjusted by either left-clicking and dragging the corresponding cursor to the required intensity, so like this, or by clicking on the peak ID threshold intensity value in the cursor legend and then editing the value displayed directly. If the user clicks on the Find Peaks shortcut button again, Libsoft will clear any peaks in the displayed wavelength range that are already marked, warning the user first, and then repeat the peak finding process using the revised threshold value. So we now have these peaks marked as well. The peak finding process only acts on the displayed region of the spectrum, so it is possible to use a different threshold value in different parts of the spectrum. For example, if we zoom into the lower wavelength range of this spectrum, and change the peak ID threshold such that some of the peaks in this region are included, the Find Peaks button can be selected again and the peaks in this wavelength range will be marked. Zooming out to the full spectrum, the peaks marked previously are unaffected. It is also possible to mark or unmark individual peaks. So if we zoom into these as yet unmarked peaks, and then drag the spectrum cursor to one of them, the plus icon up here in the title bar of the spectrum display can be used to mark that peak. Similarly, the minus icon, this one here, can be used to unmark the peak. Note that peaks can be marked individually in this way even if their intensity is less than the peak ID threshold. So if we look at this peak, which is below the threshold, we can still mark it. Once the required peaks have been marked, they can be identified. This process is described in the next video.